Hey my people, how you doing? I'm having a fantastic damn day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be breaking down Steve Cooper's 4-3-3 formation in the game FC24. Of course, if you do enjoy this video, please hit that like button. It lets YouTube know I'm doing a good enough job. And as well as if you haven't subscribed yet and you are enjoying my channel, well, subscribe. It would be fantastic. We are on the road to 3,000 subs. The sooner we get there, the better it is, but nonetheless, we will crack on with this video. So starting off with the formation, I've gone with a 4-3-3 flat. Now you might say, well, why haven't you just gone with a natural defensive midfielder opposed to the three central midfielders? Well, it does come down to the instructions and how they play and how you want them to more or less operate, so we will obviously elaborate on that a bit later, but for the time being, the only real changes I have made was I did drop that one central midfielder, the center one, of course. I did drop him ever so slightly, so he does take up a bit more of a defensive position at times. And then I did make the two wingers a bit more narrow. So it's one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two full backs, three central midfielders, one striker, and then of course two wingers. So for the tactics under Steve Cooper, I've gone with a tactical vision set to counter-attack, and they do largely look to try and counter-attack their opponents. It doesn't really matter too much who they're playing against. They will look to try and, soak up as much pressure, make sure that they're compact at the back, and then they'll hit their opponents in transition. Of course, that has led to some really good results. I mean, we saw on the weekend, Aston Villa, they beat them 2-0. But then we've seen them also draw games where they weren't supposed to, like Luton Town. So it is obviously a mixed bag of results. They're not the greatest team out there, but their tactical vision does suit the players that they do have. So as for their defensive style, I've gone with the drop back approach. It does also fit hand in hand with the counter-attacking tactical vision. Of course, you do want to try and, soak up as much pressure, try and, keep your structure, keep your shape at the back, make it very hard for the opposition to try and break down your team going forward. But at the same time, obviously, there are some deficiencies. You're not going to try and press and win that ball back nice and high up the field. You need to bear with me with that because obviously it's a defensive team. It's a defensive approach for this team going forward. If you want to pick up results, you're going to have to keep your defensive solidarity quite, in check, essentially. As for the team width, however, I've set it to 40. So your wingers will look to try and come back as much as they can, of course. They will look to try and almost take up that wing-back role in some moments. And this does help with preventing those crosses from those wide areas because your fullbacks as well as your wingbacks will be very much in tune to try and prevent those crosses from happening. But at the same time, it's a very nice compact structure. Centrally, of course, you are playing three basically defensive midfielders at times, as well as your two strong centre backs. So any passes between the lines will look to try and be cut out and intercepted and stifled, of course, and just making it very hard for the opposition to try and break down your defense. As for the team depth, it is set to a low block 25. It is very low, but it does help quite a lot, especially with those teams that look to try and get the ball in behind. And Manchester United, for example, or maybe even in Aston Villa, more times than not, they will struggle. They need to have the ball in front of them and then try and break down the defense. And for teams like that, it can be quite difficult, of course. So a 25 low block does help this team going forward. And speaking of going forward, the build-up play is set to long ball as well as the chance creation is set to forward runs. Now, this is linked with the counter-attacking tactical vision. Of course, you can't really change too much with it, but I don't think there needs to be any changes because once Nottingham Forest win that ball back and they turn it over quite nicely, they will look to try and hit their three forwards in transition. They'll look to try and have them running in behind the opposition, and they do this quite effectively at times. I mean, sometimes they are caught offside, which does infuriate the viewers or anybody watching the game, of course. But when it does work, it really makes them look really good, and it makes the opposition look really bad. I mean, Aston Villa didn't have any answers for it because, of course, they were trying to break down this low block. They were trying to throw men forward, trying to full men in these gaps and areas. And when you commit too many men forward, you leave yourself very light at the back. And then when that ball's turned over, you have an immediate advantage with the transition ball. So whether it's a long ball from one of your centre-backs or your full-backs into the front line, or maybe it's a quick movement in the midfield and then that long ball over the top or that quick through pass for your winger, it doesn't really matter as long as you're running in transition, building up quite quickly from the back to front and trying to catch the opposition out in attack. As for the width, it is set to 80. So if you haven't done that and you are trying to build up play quite effectively, Nottingham Forest do try and do this from those wide areas. You always see their fullbacks or their wingers get on the ball and try and whip in crosses to try and supply the forwards. So a lot of the attacks, they try and draw the opposition out to those wider regions and then try and leave that central area quite light. So if they do beat their man, they are able to whip in across. The likes of Awani are you know, there's not that many men around him where he can look to try and dominate the air, or the aerial game, I should say, and potentially score a goal or two. So 4 players in the box, I've gone with it set to 5. Now this will allow a 1E to get into the attacking third with the additional attacker, and maybe a third in certain moments depending on how the game is flowing at that point. But more times than not, you will look to try and keep men out of the box, out of the attacking area, to try and prevent any counterattacks on your team. Moving on to corners and free kicks, as per always, they are both set to 4. Starting off with the instructions, of course, we normally start off with the goalkeeper. Vlachodimos here set to come for crosses and have a balanced approach for a saving outside of the box. You are playing a very low block, so you don't need your goalkeeper making those crazy runs outside of his area. And then as for saving on crosses, he is very good in the air. Now, if it was Turner, I would probably set it to balance because he can be a bit shaky at times, but Vlachodimos is quite good with claiming those aerial balls and relieving the stress and the pressure on the backline. Now, speaking of the backline, moving on into it, Bali as well as Niakate are both set to their base set of instructions, whereas the likes of Tavares as well as Aurier, they are set to the same set of instructions, so both of them will look to join the attack. Normal interceptions will be on for both of them as well, and then their run type is set to mixed. Now, they do look to try and overlap more times than not, but they sometimes do look to try and link up and make those more central runs. I mean, we saw against Aston Villa on the weekend, I think it was Aina, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but more or less he did make that more central run. The cross was whipped into him and he fired it home for that first goal. So you do want to have them occasionally making those inverted runs, and that's the best way to do it, with having their run type set to mixed. And then as for their defensive position, they are both very aggressive. They like to step up and impose themselves on their opponents at times. So I've set them to step up, obviously, for their defensive positioning. And as you can see for Aurier, he's got the same set of instructions as well. Moving on into our midfield, we've got Mangala. Now, I was a bit torn between playing Mangala as the deeper central midfielder or the likes of Sangare, but I think Mangala did a better job. And more times than not, I did see him at the base of the midfield. So that's why I went with him over the likes of Sangare. But he is set to stay back while attacking. So as for the support on crosses, I've gone with stay on the edge of the box. Now, all 3 of your midfielders will look to play on the edge of the area of the opposition. All of them will look to try and rotate that ball and trying to put it into the best attacking position possible for your team to succeed going forward. As for the interceptions, it's a workhorse midfield. They are going to look to try and press the opposition when they are in the central areas and make sure that it's very hard for the opposition to try and play through the center of the park at times. So aggressive interceptions are set to be on for them. Cover the center, of course, it makes sense. You want him to be able to shield that backline more times than not, as well as his positioning. I've set it to stick to position. You don't really need him drifting wide or having a free roam approach. You need him to sometimes just be that shield in front of that back line. Moving on to Sangare, he's also set to stay back while attacking. So sometimes this formation will take up a bit more of a 4-2-3-1 approach or look to it. And that is because Sangare as well as Mangala will look to try and build up quite nicely from the back, as well as help each other out on the defensive side of things, both looking to shield the back four at times. Staying on the edge of the box, aggressive interceptions are set to be on for him, so very similar to what Mangala's is. Cover the wing this time, so it's slightly different, so he will look to fill in for Aurier if need be, and then stick to position. As for Dominguez, one of my favorite players, I don't know why, he's just so good, so talented. I have been using him in quite a few of my career modes, so if you haven't, check him out, he is quite nice, but he's going to be a bit more of the box-to-box player, being a bit more involved in the final third, maybe stringing together a few of those final third passes maybe, so he is going to, like I say, be that box-to-box player. His support on crosses is set to stay on the edge of the box, like I say, for the other two as well, looking to recycle possession where need be. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on for him, as well as cover the wing, so he will look to fill in for Tavares if he has not made his way back in time, as well as stick to position. Out to the right-hand side for Morgan Gibbs-White, we have got him set to come back on defense, and the free roam role is set to be on form, so he doesn't have to always maintain that right-hand side as much. He can look to drop into the midfield link-up play quite effectively and efficiently. And he also tends to try and pull opposition players out of position, whether it's the fullback, whether it's a centre-back. He will look to try and do that by popping up in those little half spaces, drawing players out of position. His support on crosses, or his support runs, I should say, sorry, not crosses, but his support runs I've set to balance. You do want him to occasionally be able to get in behind. Of course, you are looking to try and trigger that counter-attack, but at the same time, he can also come short, like I say, linking up with the midfield, or potentially be a target man, ball to chest, and then potentially spraying a pass on into the other forwards, potentially, who are making those runs in behind. So the balanced approach does best suit what you are trying to get out of your star number 10. As for his interceptions, I've gone with it set to normal, as well as his support on crosses. This time, I've set it to balance. So, like I say, with the players in the box, it's more or less going to be 2 with the additional third. Sometimes it will be Morgan Gibbs White, occasionally making that deeper run. Other times it will maybe even be the likes of Dominguez. So moving on to your left-hand side, Anthony Elanga. He has a slightly different role to the right wing, of course. So you're going to try and use a bit more of his pace and his ability to get in behind, obviously with him. So he's set to come back on defense, always looking to try and help out the fullback. As for the chance creation, I would set to balance. So not always looking to try and hold the width, not always looking to come inside. He can do a bit of both, but more importantly, you do want to try and get the best out of him in terms of using his pace in behind the opposition. He is very good, very effective with it. And he has shown this season that he can be an out-and-out Premier League winger for a solid team. I mean, Nottingham Forest are and have been very solid this season. So I'm quite happy for him. Of course, I'm a United fan, so nonetheless, I'm just glad to see that he's gone to a team that they appreciate him, they respect him, and they're playing him. He deserves those minutes. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. His interceptions, I've set to aggressive, constantly looking to press that back line, trying to win that ball back if need be. And then as for support on crosses, get into the box for those crosses. You want him being that extra man in the attacking third next to the striker. Speaking of which, your striker, Taiwo Awoniyi, he is set to having a balanced width, so he does look to, and I was oddly surprised with this, he does look to drift into those wider areas quite efficiently. But at the same time, when the ball's fired into the box, he is in the central areas attacking that ball. So a balanced width best suits him, to be honest. I think it's a good approach for Taiwo Awoniyi to have. His attacking runs is set to target man, of course, ball into chest, hold up the play, linking up quite effectively with the likes of Gibbs White, as well as Elanga at times. So he is very strong, very physical, and does do a very good job nonetheless. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on for him, as well as stay forward. So he will be the outlet ball in transition more times than not. Either having the ability to get in behind the opposition and then just take it all the way to the goal, or potentially having it knocked into him and then laying it off to one of his wingers on either side of him. So yes, my people, that is my version of Steve Cooper's 4-3-3. Of course, I do know that they play a back 5 system, and I will definitely get to that at some point. But until the next time, please smash that like button, subscribe if you are new, and I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.